a minor. Oh, can we please? I hope that stays in the intro. All right, we're here. Stephen O'Neill of the Manship, one of the best, if not the best, bourbon collection in the state. Even is that rivaling even out of the state? What's going on here?
I'd say we're one of the best in the Southeast, and in the country, I'd put us in the top 20, top 50. I generally keep my pulse on places, but there's 4 or 5 notable bars throughout the U.S. You have Cannon in Seattle. You have Multnomah Whiskey Library in Portland. You have Jack Rose in Washington, D.C. Sazerac House in New Orleans has a pretty good bar, and we'll even rival them because they're kind of exclusive with their own brand. But yeah, so we're then you have Delilah's in Chicago. You have Poison Girl in Houston. Those would be probably the most notable whiskey bourbon bars in my mind in America.
I love it. So one of the best bourbon selections, obviously one of the best brunch selections. But I got to give a little bit of that over to our counterpart here. Tyler Alford is coming in. Is it fair to call you the new kid on the block?
Without a doubt.
Without a doubt?
Yeah.
I see the bourbon collection is coming up. I can't partake, but I'm coming soon. Those red beans and rice, like we talked about off camera, I'm coming for those as soon as I get that transplant.
There you go.
Because I hear they are the best in the state. You don't offer red beans and rice, so.
No, we don't.
You can't take it. But the wings, if you had to put them up against, who would you say?
Well, no, his were pretty good. I enjoyed having his tonight. I'm glad ours are back, It's been a minute. We finally took away the barbecue chicken pizza because that was a deconstructed version of our wing, but we brought the wings themselves back. And so we did take away a crowd favorite in the pizza, but we brought on some new pizzas. And so, again, like Manship, we always want to be evolving.
Put those pieces out there for me real quick.
All the ones we're currently serving.
The new ones.
The new ones, we've got a new charcuterie pizza, which used to be a brunch-only pizza. It's got an apricot jam base, our house blend of cheese. It's got mixed charcuterie, candied walnuts, and blue cheese crumbles. And it works really, really well. And I'm not even a huge blue cheese person, but it all works in one bite. And then an al pastor pizza. And that may be one that rolls off sooner than later. It hadn't been as well received as I liked, but I wanted to do like a play on a taco pizza. And so al pastor toppings on a pie, and then our traditional margarita and our also always seasonal vegetable pizza.
I vote for the pastor. I just had a slice. It was delicious. So,
best menu item at Eudoras, what would you say?
Oh, man. Right now, I'm loving the blueberry bechamel and brie duck breast. That's been a really great one. Lots of summer flavors there. I would say the most popular has definitely been that whole roasted snapper.
I have seen that.
Yeah.
I still got to get used to that. Just whatever. We're going to move. I don't even want to disrespect anyone.
Yeah. It's head on. I mean, it's the entire fish. So you got to get used to that. But we've had some recent menu changes. We have a few more coming up. But I would say the most Instagrammable and one you've seen the most that people are responding to has been that whole snapper.
Staying on Instagram, you do have one of the most Instagrammable locations in the city right now.
We made an effort.
Was that intentional?
Without a doubt. I feel that as all restaurateurs know, you eat with your eyes first, and that starts when you walk in the door. So we made a conscious decision to really try to make it vibrant and loud. In our own way. Obviously, Eudora is a tip of the hat to Eudora Welty, so quite a bit of foliage and green space in that area. But we definitely wanted to do something that we felt looked interesting, and we stuck with a very specific color palette, which is extremely specific. But it seems to have worked out. People seem to really enjoy it. There's not a single night that there's not like a photo shoot happening of some sort.
We're in the business of selling experiences. And when people see an experience, you want to make somebody else jealous of your experience, honestly, in the day of social media.
Yeah.
That FOMO.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head. Like that's free marketing, right? Like I'm going to take a picture in this space. And even if it's not necessarily the dish, it makes someone be motivated to check that out. Like a giant wall of bourbon, or a new charcuterie pizza. Like,
speaking of experience, I want to lay out an experience I had in a restaurant recently. I went to brunch, solo. The biscuit might as well have been a rock. Sausage, inedible. Eggs, just the powdered eggs. Probably took 2 or 3 bites out of it. Hash browns, forget about it. I pushed the plate away. Call for the bartender. I say, hey, give me the check. Bartender comes up. He says, hey, you barely touched your food. I said, yes. That's because it was horrible. He just looks at me and goes, okay, I'll get your check. Walks off. The question I'm asking you both, is the customer still always right in 2024?
Yes, but no. I feel as a
Steve-O's itching over here.
I feel in restaurants, the answer is always yes, right? Mm-hmm. You try to find a way to say yes, but sometimes it's really difficult to find a way to say yes. But I'll let Steve-O take it from there.
10 years later, I'm a little more jaded. Yes, they are. And I'm definitely a yes person. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a yes person. I want to over excel at hospitality, and I want everybody to feel like a VIP. But there's definitely times where they are not right. One of the most memorable in my career, I was actually extremely busy Saturday night, got a table sitting there, 4 ladies, and we go drop the food simultaneously, myself and the server. And I drop 2 dishes, he drops 2 dishes. And right as I drop the dish, the woman that I'm serving says to her friend across the way, oh man, I really should have got what you have. That looks good. Within 3 minutes, I have a call from the server saying that she wasn't enjoying her dish. And so I walked up and I looked at the dish and I said, it's odd that you're not enjoying the dish because you haven't even taken a bite out of it. And I said, I'll more than happily get you what she's having and box this up for you to go home. But we didn't do it. We executed this dish as supposed to be. And so you're going to have to pay for it. And it led to a significant confrontation.
So there's that instance. Staying on this one, what did that bartender do wrong in my situation, and what did I do wrong or right?
I don't think you did anything wrong in your situation. I think the bartender should have taken the initiative to at least inform a manager that a guest was having a less than desirable experience. I mean, I'd say the biggest thing for customer service was me is I want to make it right while you're there. And I understand a lot of people don't want to get a manager, but it's so much easier for us to fix it while you're there than before you walk out the door, write a bad review, or send us an email. And I appreciate all those forms of communication. A baseball analogy, restaurants can't bat 1,000. We hope for the high 900s, but people are involved. We're going to fail. But it's us making those failures right when they are our fault. That is the biggest thing to me for customer service. But again, the guest isn't always right. Sometimes you just have to say we're going to part ways and wish you the best.
It's really fun to listen to me hear myself speak when it's his.
You said everything I was thinking.
Yeah, oh gosh, well now what do I say? Steve-O hit on a really good point of you try to fix it in the moment. And at Commander's Palace, one thing that got drilled into us was the sun never sets on a guest complaint. And, no matter what, you try to make sure you get it right before the day's over, or else you lose that opportunity, And I think in some instances, the guest for you giving feedback, thank you, in the moment, opportunity to correct it. And I think more often than not, we're dealing with folks that may have come from another system or have their own interpretation of hospitality or maybe even trained to say screw them.
And he got off lucky.
Right.
Because I didn't go to social media and bash. I still gave him the 20%. I was just and I know, because restaurants, right, you're always, like you just said, you're always going to have an off day. But I just think the customer sometimes is not allowed an off day in restaurants either. And so I just kind of wanted to put that there as well.
All right. We'll flip that around.
Oh, here we go.
So in our first month of opening, I'm working 100-hour weeks. I mean, just grinding it out from 6 in the morning till midnight, day in, day out, 6 days a week. And a gentleman,
Well,
probably
you're not still doing that?
Yeah, thank goodness I'm
when
not.
does that stop? When does that-
About year 8 or 9.
Great, 7 more to go. Cool.
So,
What year are you? Oh,
Like month 9.
yeah. All right.
It's okay.
but so a gentleman comes in and sits at the bar, and he's in his 70s, and he orders a lasagna, and I can still remember it to this day. And his food comes out, and he tells the bartender he's not enjoying it, and I go and I'm trying to do my due diligence as a manager, and I'm asking him for adjectives. Was it too salty? Was it too hot, too spicy, too this or that, or not enough of anything? And he said, no, I'm just not in the mood. And so I took a beat back for a second, because I could tell he wasn't enjoying himself. He was there by himself, and being across from a hospital, we get to see both sides of life. We get to see the beginning of life and people celebrating children being born, and we get to see the end of life and people mourning the loss of a loved one or someone that is across the street that's terminal. And that was the instance we were in that moment. His name was Bob Smith, and I know that's the most generic name ever, but he ended up living 3 houses down from my parents, and his wife was across the way and was terminal, and she would later pass 2 days later. He would end up bringing his daughters in to dine with me and introduce them, because I was able to talk with Bob and find him something else. That hearty dish wasn't what he was looking for. He wanted something lighter. He ended up having the redfish after that and really enjoying it, and being able to have a glass of wine with it and go back across the way and spend more time with his wife. But it was knowing and interpreting that situation where I was able to turn that scenario around. Yeah. When the guest wasn't happy, he didn't even want to tell me he wasn't happy, but I was able to slowly get that from him by taking a moment to establish that rapport.
Staying on happy. Question for both. What were your thoughts in terms of happy? What the fuck when the whole gluten epidemic started in restaurants? Well, you got the first one that said like no gluten. What did you do? Did you go like, really?
I mean, Tyler and I both come from elevated cuisine, and so I feel like we were a little more privy to trends. Gluten wasn't as big a one for me. It was when the Lone Star tick and the alpha-gal syndrome started. That was the one that caught me most off guard. Never in my career have I heard of a red meat allergy. But the Lone Star tick biting you can cause what's known as alpha-gal syndrome, and it activates an enzyme where your body will not process red meat and possibly pork. And so actually Lee Bailey, one of our farmers who owns Salad Days, got bit by a Lone Star tick because she's an avid outdoors person and hunter. And it really, for years, she's just now, 10 plus years later, coming back to being able to eat red meat and pork.
Does it affect black people the same? Is it?
I don't know.
That was a joke. Sorry. Tyler, go.
I'm he was describing the charcuterie pizza. I'm allergic to walnuts, and so of course I'm like, I kind of want to have that pizza, but with like candy pecans. And I think the whole celiac gluten, obviously celiac's a real thing. Gluten, it's a part of, I think it's part of the dining stratosphere that no matter what, we're going to be stuck with trends, and whether or not it's a have to change the dish trend or everyone wants an espresso martini trend. There's all sorts of these waves that you kind of have to deal with or be ahead of. I remember a couple summers ago, Spagliato was like you had to have one, right?
What is that?
It was Negroni with sparkling wine, yeah. Because it was I can't remember her name. It was like, I'm just gonna go drink a Spagliato. But nonetheless, I think that as a restaurateur, you try to be ahead of that, and a lot of times I think that in service, you'll get like 40 feet down in the weeds, and you're just pulling kite tails off of Expo and trying to figure out how to deal with it. And all of a sudden, it's like this guest didn't want this because it was cross-contaminated in the
kite
fryer.
tails receipts.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, like a long trail of receipts coming off a printer.
Okay,
it's got so many modifiers that every modifier is a line on the ticket, and your ticket's a mile long because one person has all of the things, sub everything, basically recompose the entire dish that you had on your menu into what they think they want.
See, that's kind of, so I used to eat out a lot, but when the kidney disease hit, core kidney failure, I stopped going as much because I would have to make modifications to plates. And I just kind of felt bad for it because, like I said, with the gluten, at first I made fun of a lot of those people because I think we talked off mic. You said it was actually a thing where, but people made it a fad or a trend, as you said.
As Tyler said, celiac is a real disease. We acknowledge that, and that there's people whose body truly can't process the wheat and the things like that. But again, I think that comes from during time, we've added more chemicals to crops and things have become more mass produced. I think back when you had more non-GMO products and things like that, it never presented itself because our bodies aren't reacting to chemicals, they're reacting to food. And so the buildup of chemicals and things like that has what's caused the evolution of celiacs, in my opinion, which is why we try to do as much with our local heritage farmers and things like that. But it develops and then it becomes a dietary trend, and then people are, again, taking it away from their body for a long enough period that when they add it back, yes, it's definitely going to cause something because you haven't had it or your body's not used to it. Just like going to, Mexico and drinking the water, you're not supposed to because your body can't deal with it, but the locals do it every day. It's because their body's accustomed to it.
I think both make a good point of a guest that decided that she didn't want it because she wanted something else on the table versus I can't fucking eat it or I can't fucking like it. And those are two different scenarios. I feel that you're seeking to find a balance between getting the guests what they want off the menu, on the ticket, versus what lands on the plate and either makes them happy or not. A post delivery decision of I don't want to eat this is way harder to deal with than like, hey, these are the things I can have or I can't have. But we recently added a series of markers on our menu to help guests determine, like, is this pork free? Is this gluten free? Can it be gluten free? And it's helped us a bit, but also I think it's helped with our server confidence to be able to navigate that. It's not ideal, having all those dots on there, but at the same time, like, I think that if you can get the guests at least started with the idea of these are the things that I can enjoy. And honestly, like when you look at reviews, like that's what shows up. Like I'm a vegetarian, they didn't have any options for me, or I ordered gluten-free and I didn't feel good the next day. It's like, all right, how do you counterbalance that? Because that 1 or 2 star review, it's like, where do we miss that mark? And how do we not have that happen in the future? But I think there's a lot of studies that show there's not a ton of people that are going to go show up for a gluten-free menu. It's 5, maybe 6%, but you're still trying to make sure that in a margin of 1% profit at best, that 5% makes a big difference.
I have to say, I appreciate the polite yet informative way you both told me to shut the fuck up just then. Thank you so much for that. But staying on 2 keywords that stuck out.
Cool. Here's your check.
Here's your check. 2 keywords stuck out on that: trends and waves. But a word that sticks out to me now on those are myths. Please solve the myth of the elusive or illustrious bartender ear. Is that a real thing? Can bartenders hear everything?
Not everything, but definitely the things you don't want them to hear.
Okay, keep going.
You'd be surprised. I think that most people don't realize that there's not a lot of audio coming from behind a bartender. So everything you're saying is all of the audio that's coming to them. So like you may have a busy restaurant behind you that you can't hear your conversation. And so you're already talking 125% more than you normally would. And that person's just standing behind a wall of whiskey that's just simply reverberating every conversation you're having.
See, that hurts because what you're just telling me is most bartenders have definitely heard me get rejected.
I mean, someone will listen, someone will don't, but I remember when I was first starting bartending, I was at a Cheesecake Factory in South Point, Durham. And this one bartender we had, Katie, she was the best because she would listen to the conversations and be like, hey, you should go ask that girl for her phone number. And that was the best bartenders here ever. Because she'd be like, oh, yeah, you should go talk to her. So
all right. So something else about bartenders. And I was wondering if I was going to bring this up or not. And if you know about it, great. If you don't, we'll move on. But I want to touch briefly on this wave of just bartenders who just cock block the shit out of their customers. That's a new thing. Have you all seen this or witnessed this or been a party of this?
I'm gonna say no. I mean, me being divorced and I'm not behind the bar anymore, I would hope that my team is not doing that. I can definitely see the opportunity for it. I think that's pretty low down and dirty. Honestly, it's almost, if there was a code of ethics that a bartender should have, it should always be to serve the guest and make the experience. So if you're on a date as a bartender, you should definitely not be trying to interject on a first date to get a girl's number.
The bartender is the most trusted person in the bar. So that power that they have in the bar supersedes pretty much everyone that's seated. And so they have the ability to make or break you. And I've seen certain bartenders, one would put a shot. If you were succeeding with a girl, he'd come and put a shot or a drink in front of her and ask her, hey, try this, tell me what you think, to try to break your like rhythm and flow. And so it got to the point where a number of us, we just wouldn't go into his bar anymore. And we had a code, like Code Montague, like Friday night. That was our name for him. We wouldn't go in there. But yeah, I'm just wondering.
I think Steve and I come from a different era, or like a different mechanism of dining. I've worked at a few high volume late night bars, but if one of my bartenders was pulling that, I wouldn't be very happy with it. It would probably be some significant coaching. But I had a friend. Sorry, this brings up a classic person in my history. His name is John Kane. He unfortunately passed, but he was literally a like 6'6" redheaded pirate. There's really no way to describe this person, just gigantic. And I think it was like 23 or 24, but I was working with him, and he was just giving me these little tidbits like here and there. One of which was a leisure suit that I still have. It's just incredible. But he gave me this piece of wisdom where one day I was just kind of having a rough day and not really enjoying myself. And he said, Tyler, what's a bartender's job? I was like, I don't know, pour drinks, like get the tickets out. He goes, no, it's to get people laid. And I was like, holy
You almost made me yell cut.
Right? But I was like, well, that's really interesting, because if you think of it from the hospitality standpoint, it's like, no, you're helping an experience to be great, and if you look at all of hospitality, it's like our job is really just for you to sit down and for you to have such a great meal or such a great drink that your endorphins are firing. And maybe if it's the first date or second or third, I guess it's third date now, you're supposed to walk out there and continue the evening. But I remember John being like, no, your job is to get people laid. And I remember that being like a standard in some operations, where it was like, no, like the guest needs to be happy. It's like, should the guest always be right? No, but they should definitely try to leave as happy as possible.
So so Sasha Petrovsky is a famous bar owner from New York and designed some of those beautiful bar spaces and cocktail menus, and was really at the top of the craft for over a decade. But when he would design his bars, one of them he designed with a wave, but it was a wave that steadily got further out from the wall as it went down, so that no matter where you sat in the bar, you could see every person at the bar. And it was all about making eye contact in New York and being able to see who was out looking for a good time that night. And again, that's just reinforcing what Tyler's saying. Our job was to get you laid. I've enjoyed for my friends and for people I didn't know and clients over the years that, like, I always wanted to be known as the closer. Like, don't bring them to me on date 1, date 2. I want to be date 3, date 4. Like, you bring them to me. The next time you're coming in, it's
make you look
thank
good.
You, man.
Yeah,
make you look good.
Yeah.
Like, I appreciate that, and it's always why, when I see an old friend, good evening, Mr. Manors. It's great to have you with us tonight. It's been a minute since I've seen you, but I'm so glad to have you in our presence this evening. And who's this lovely lady you have with you this evening? Again, that over the top, the stroke.
What do you think has happened to that? Do you think that style of bartender is done? Is that a thing of yesterday?
I think some of it has died in modern culture.
Keep going.
I don't feel that chivalry is viewed the same way that it was at one point in time. I think you can still be chivalrous in today's modern age, but I think it's viewed in a different light, or maybe it's not even appreciated at a conscious level by a lot of the younger generation.
I agree with that. I think also too, going back to what we were discussing earlier, some of this is strictly visceral. And my good friend Russell was recently talking about a restaurant he was at that I was a part of for a long time.
Russell's a pretty cool dude. Isn't
Yeah, and I was like, oh yeah, the design elements are very similar to what we do, but like you kind of take from that, and versus like Steve and I used to work the wood and be up there pouring drinks and making that experience, but now it's our job.
Work the wood.
The bar top, the wood on the bar, talking to the guests, being a part of that experience. But, for us now, it's run Excel, make sure payroll hits, make sure that the space is clean and that the bills are paid. And so, some of that gets lost, but it does still continue to evolve, where you have to be cognizant of what's bringing that guest in and what's making them come in. And like we used to be Tinder. It's like, oh, you got to meet this person, or hey, you should come by. This girl I think you'd like to meet comes in every Friday, kind of thing. But from that standpoint, there's a lot of different ways now that the guest experience has evolved into restaurants being still a sociable construct, but also, not as much work in the wood as it used to be.
I like what you said. You're doing the Excel and the spreadsheets and everything, which leads me to my next question, or statement rather, for you both. Let's have a little fun. Give me top 3 best and or most ridiculous call-in excuses from employees.
All right. So legitimate or non-legitimate?
All right, let's do both. Let's have a little fun.
I mean, most over-the-top call-out that I've gotten that was actually real, sorry, boss, I was arrested for murder last night.
What?
For murder.
Yeah, Tyler.
I can't top that one.
Let's not do that one.
I was thinking back through these, and like, they're all pretty ridiculous. I think again, you've come back. I keep going back to social media, and I wish I could get off this, but my favorite thing is when you get a call out, and then you hop on Instagram, and they're like, "Take a shot to the club," and they're out, and you're just like, "Whoa!" Like, how? Like,
are you this brazen?
Right, this brazen. It's like, oh man, I'm sick. I'm not gonna be able to make it in tonight. Luckily, most of the time it's not like, oh, my mom's in the hospital or anything like that. But then you'll look and it's like, all right, 4 hours later, cheers,
Cheers,
and you're like, okay, like.
Or they forget the next day and come in like, I'm so hungover.
Right, and you're like, oh, you're still sick, huh? Yeah. But I mean, I've had guys that ended up in jail and all those stories, but nothing that was like shockingly like, wow, like things get made up all the time. And I think the call out is an art. Like it really is. Like the effective call out.
An art.
It really is. Like for you to be effectively convincing, like you can't have a conversation with your peers. You can't have an out.
You can't do anything now. If you
like you gotta really strategize it to where it's like, all right, no one's gonna snitch on me.
Well, that, and I mean, you don't get out with me unless you have a doctor's note.
Fair enough.
So like, if you're not bringing me a doctor's note, you're not excused. And part of that is because it's not, we want you there when you don't want to be there. It's because you're screwing every other member on the team and they're having to pick up more weight, and you're going to potentially you're going to disable 300 people's experience that night just by you being gone. And so it's a domino effect. And so I don't have a lot of tolerance for it. Again, if I see your social media and you called in, you're terminated. I've never terminated a protected class. I did terminate one guy for being a flat earther on the spot. As soon as I found out he was a flat earther, I was like, dude, you're done. Get out of here.
That's like, I'm so proud of you. That's like the greatest thing I've ever. That's amazing.
why being a flat earther is cause for grounds for
that
termination?
he already kind of had
fucking
done some
stupid.
things before, but it was just like if you, I was like, because I was like, you truly believe this, right? Like, despite all the science and everything else that was out there, I was like, nope, sorry, just got no tolerance for it.
He couldn't run bowls to the table.
Oh,
Had to be
man.
plates only.
Why'd you get fired? That's like worse than getting fired on your day off. Why you get fired? Because I was a flat earther. I guess
He just, he just went right off the edge, and then that was it. We couldn't keep him any longer.
that's wild. Okay,
I think it takes more like that to end certain stigmas too. Like, don't even accept this stuff. Let it go, and people will be like, "Oh, I can't do that crap anymore," because they're doing it for attention.
Yeah,
and that's the whole thing too. Is it's like this isn't real.
yeah.
Oh man, so it's actually those excuses. You just made me think about how often parents will blame the children when they don't want to do something. And so one of the good things about kidney failure is like no one can question you on kidney failure. If you go like, "Hey Don, you want to come to the party?" "Oh no, treatment. I don't feel good." No one can question you. They can't take your word in because who's really going to be the asshole? It's like, really? You going to question a guy with kidney failure? He said he don't feel good. Leave him alone. I don't have to do shots. If I don't like your cooking at the potluck, I ain't got to taste that. No. Cheese. Sorry. So sorry. So you just made me think of that. I love that. And I just want to throw that in for a second for all y'all to keep inviting me to your potlucks. Stop.
Steven and I'll come. Just
For
pass the
sure.
invitation along. We'll go in your stead.
Split checks.
He was supposed to come to my last one.
I came.
You did.
Well, that sounded good. Pause. I said stop by. Anyway. All right. I'm going to get off course if I keep that going. Talk to me about split checks. Why the headache? Why do we always get in trouble for splitting checks?
It's big. And it's not so much a split check if you stay seated and you're in the same spot. But if you're table jumping because you want to be social with everybody at a 15, 18, 20 top, because let's be real, when you book a 20 top, you're going to talk to the three people closest to you the entire evening. If you either only talk to those three people or you're getting up and moving. And it's extremely hard for a server who doesn't know a single one of y'all from Adam to expressly identify every single face in the party. And she had that drink all night long, especially if you have cocktail 1, cocktail 2, cocktail 3, and you
Somebody's
never drink the
ordering
same
shots.
thing. And then you're moving seats and you're coming around. How do they retabulate that at the end of the night and get it right? What leads to is them spending an hour trying to get your checks correct. And it's the time that we could have had that table. It's the time they could have gotten another round of tables. And it's about performance. And unfortunately, in taking care of our team member and making sure at the end of the night that they walk with a livable wage.
So is that why the automatic gratuity is added to parties of like 6 or more? How did that start and when did that start?
I think it's just a way to make sure that your teammates are taken care of. We were talking about this earlier, and the hardest thing to deal with, number one, is a call out if you're strapped for resources, but number two is a pissed off server. Like if someone's coming around and not happy to see you, like it's going to be difficult to recover from that guest experience when you're starting with that negative energy. But when you see a 6 top and they're like, okay, I'm going to make 20%, it's a little bit easier to deal with some of those requests, because you're going from a 2 top to 3 times larger, which probably means you're going to have 3 times as many strange requests. But then to Steve's point, like you multiply that times the FOMO effect, like you're looking at upwards of 6 times the amount of red ticket on that kite tail. And so as a result, you try to buffer that as far as letting the staff know, like, no, we're going to make sure your income is there. And that you're appropriately taken care of. And I don't want to give any like cred to systems, but do you guys use a piece of bread that comes out of a oven for your POS system? I'm talking about. Sorry, do you guys use toast? Is that yours? Yeah. So
I was like, wait, what?
Well,
That's definitely not a black thing.
We just dropped toast and signed with a new
Fair
company,
enough.
and
Fair
so
enough.
I'm really excited to bring on some new technology that's going to provide better customer service for us on the back end. But again, that's a conversation we can have after this.
A whole other conversation. And I think to Steve's credit, like you can start these checks a certain way and start these tables and start these seats, but you're still kind of navigating. It's like trying to have 14 different DM conversations in an hour and a half with 14 different people that are all very needy.
Or imagine you have a group chat with 30 people on it, but yet through that group chat, you can click everybody individually and chat back into it and out of it. And that's what you're managing.
And you
the
never
whole
know
time.
who's going to talk when they're going to talk either.
And they want a response immediately.
Right. And then when it's time for the group chat to be over, they all want to be done. They want to hit close
And
at
ready
the same
to go.
time.
Yeah, we're ready to go. This
But-
is horrible. I'm not tipping them nothing.
Well, but that's the point. Is that as business owners and restaurateurs, you kind of have to look at it from the standpoint of like, all right, I don't want to keep my my best servers upset with the fact that there's probably not going to be a good tip. So we're going to counterbalance it ahead of time. And you print it in tiny font on the bottom of the menu, and you put it on the website. People still get upset about it, but I've had a few times where I'm like, look, like while I'm chatting with you about this, he's been standing over at that POS system running each of your cards and printing each of your cards and trying to find 25 pins.
And say you only have 3 point of sales or where you can do that.
Yeah.
Now every other server that has a table that's cashing out is waiting 30 minutes to cash their table out because they're tying one of the 3 places they can do it up.
So we're paying for the
it
headache.
affects other tables in the restaurant as well.
Yeah.
So essentially that charges us paying for the headache.
Yep.
Okay.
It's not necessarily a headache. It's the
more
loss
work.
of performance for the team members because again, it's that and it's and flip side, the separate checks, while it takes more time, they're also, if you have one guy that I love, the baller mentality, I'll call it. The person who always wants to come out and pick up the check because he's the big wig, but then only wants to leave 5% on it.
Yeah.
I know like 6 of those.
And I've heard this numerous times. Well, I bought the check. It's their job to tip.
No.
Well, that's never the case. Whoever picks up the bill is.
Yeah, you should. Because then how am I going to tip?
that's-
Now she's got to go run the cards again to tip.
Yeah.
All right, I got you.
And I think I think that for Steve and I, it's like we're going to take those 20 tops and we're going to figure out how to make it work. It's rarely he and I stand there running these cards, but at the same time, we have multiple relationships to maintain. There's the most important one, which is the employee, and then there's the guest. And if both of those don't walk out of the building happy, we're not going to be able to recreate that. And there's no point in having that 20 top. There's no point in even trying to make it work. But I think that, at the end of the day, you're looking at it being like, all right, like I want all of those 20 people worth of sales. No questions asked. How do I make that happen? But if it's a bad experience for them because the server feels that they're not going to be taken care of, then you're not going to get it again. And maybe the server's going to call out and then be at the club on Instagram.
What drink, if a man comes in and orders, you both being past bartenders, are you absolutely going to judge him in the negative? If he orders what?
That's a bait. that's a gender biased bait.
If a guy comes in and orders a espresso martini, are you judging?
I'm going to judge you if you order Jim Beam neat.
Oh.
Yeah, because I'm going to be like, man, what? Like, are you trying to like, that's just a method.
I'm kind of with that as well. But I don't care if you order a Pappy and Coke either. It's your money. It's your drink. Do with what you want. I'd have to say, I'd probably go back to the 90s when I was younger and more boisterous. Like, if you ordered a Cosmo, I was going to judge you because a dude just shouldn't order a Cosmo.
You shouldn't order a Cosmo.
But again, there's something for everybody, and sometimes that's your thing.
So something, go ahead.
New Orleans had a guy come in and he ordered, I think it was a 97 Salon Grand Cru Champagne, and then asked for a side of orange juice on the side. And just making $2,000 mimosas. It was, it was incredible. But, you got to kind of go with whatever the guest is looking for. So, but I think that these days, like, drink what you want to drink or don't. I think Ritual and the Zero Proofs are a really good example of like, you can get whatever you want. Our most popular cocktail is a French martini that we put a flower in, and literally no one wanted it until all of a sudden there's a flower in it.
I see those,
and they're everywhere. And there's just some things you can't predict there, but
and we got to keep Don Kazarian in business.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
So something I used to do, and this is race related. Warning. Something I used to do, and I'm going to take this. This is not coming out of you all's mouth. It's coming out of mine. There's the adage: black people don't tip. So What I would always used to do was say New Orleans, especially, and I really appreciate the service industry in New Orleans. And I think because there's so much competition there, which is why the pricing and the service is the way it is versus like smaller markets where you don't have to compete as hard. But what I would always do, make sure I ordered like a premium bourbon, neat. For some reason, ordering that would immediately signal to the bartender that, oh, he's okay. Why do you think that is? They just knew. Like, they'd sit the bottle in front of me in some bars. It's like, you're drinking good stuff.
I think it's anything premium. I mean, I would say premium call off the back. I mean, if we're talking not shelf but top shelf, is always going to bring attention. There's no color barrier there at all.
It's an education level.
Yeah.
And then something else I'd also do, like if the drink was just to establish as well, say if I might just give like a 20 off the bat. Like if I ordered a Maker's Neat, here's 20. Hey, don't worry about it. Keep it. That also established. But it was also me trying to prove like, hey, like,
don't let me run dry.
Well, don't let me run dry, but also at the same time, I don't know if it was foolish of me or like a what do you call it, an insecurity or so, but I just had to I felt like I needed to let them know, like, yo, don't stereotype me. And so what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, well, you hit on a few different points there, but the pre-tip always works without a question. Like you slide a 20 or it's guaranteed.
It can be 5 deep. And, hey,
yeah.
Little dude, under 6 feet. You know, that's what so.
But also, too, I agree with Steve that, appreciation of the product, we're doing 100 to plus hours of dealing with this stuff. That someone comes in, they're like, hey, I appreciate it as much as you do as far as trying to sell it. A lot of these bartenders and or service people are very well educated in their product, that it is kind of like, an unknown, a known relation to that kind of helps build your respect and trust in the guest.
It worked worked wonders every time.
Yeah.
My final thought. I have a scenario. This has been the hottest topic probably like the last couple of years, with tipping. I want to set a scenario up for you. Let's stay in NOLA with this one. I'm on a bachelor party. This is completely fabricated. On a bachelor party, me, 7 other guys. We walk into a bar. Bartender, give us 7 shots of Makers. All right. He puts a tab in front of us. Shots are $6 a piece, $42. I give him, let's just say I give him a $20 tip on top of that. What's your thoughts on that tip?
Yeah, it's a great tip.
Great tip?
Appropriate for a bachelor party order. Yeah. 7 shots of Maker's Mark, yeah.
And we just roll. It's 20%. What is that? Is that, just about 50%?
43.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. All right. I'm never calling into Georgia. All right. Now, let's flip it. We walk in. Yet again, we're just as drunk. We do the same thing. We just pick a bottle. Hey, give us 7 shots of that. He pours it. Same action. Pulls the bottles down. 7 shots. Boom, 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 boom. But this time, he puts a tab in front of us for $700. If I still tip $20, how much of an asshole am I? Even though he did the same action for 20 and was happy.
I feel there's a lot of variables associated with that. Number one, like how far up the shelf was it? Number 2, did you call it by name? Number 3, did the bartender say like, hey man, this is $100 a shot? 4,
no, he just goes like, oh, okay.
Were you in there the night before and called for that in front of you and tipped well? I think that if someone just walks in and says, I'll take a bunch of shots of that, I think it is on the bartender to be like, all right, man, like this is above average, Same to that point of like appreciating the product. It's like, well, you got to also appreciate the guest and where they're coming from. So if it's like a 1% whiskey, you got to be like, all right, let's just make sure. You're like, hey, have you had this before? Are you familiar with it? Anything along those lines. But
if somebody walks in and says, let me get 7 shots of that bottle of Don Julio, And that's because they see the brand name, but it's the 1942, which is like a $300 retail bottle of tequila. You know, that's the time when, just because he said Don Julio, anybody who knows that bottle is going to say, let me get a shot of that 1942. They're not going to say Don Julio, because it's its own extension of product that is a standalone, ultra premium and Yeho. That's one of my favorites. But again, it's take that opportunity to say, hey man, you know, this is on our menu at $70 a shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the bartender should absolutely alert you.
I think they should alert you. And then unfortunately, I feel like in that scenario, if we were faced with that, whoever ordered it is still going to double down over ego. And still going to order, and still may feel that the $20 is okay because it's similar work. But in reality, we work on percentages, and then it really, you know, tipping culture is what it is. We've built it, and I can say, for a lot of reasons, that we can't pay a livable wage to both front of house and back of house. I can pay livable wage to the back of the house, and they can be hourly. And there's stuff that I do bonus structure wise to take care of my whole team at the end of the year at Christmas time, because front of the house is tip. And so back of the house gets a weighting on that bonus system, where back of house actually gets 60% of the bonus and 40% goes to front of the house, because front of the house workers are tipped. And so they're paid for their knowledge and their excellence. And that's also why I'm against a flat, like, in DC now, you see an auto grat everywhere you go, because the house is actually taking the gratuity and redistributing it to make wage, versus just letting every guest pay every server individually and them being enhanced for their work product.
Do you think servers would more so like that method, or where you still leave it to the customers?
They would most rather leave it to the customer, because overall they're going to make a greater average. The median income for most servers is between $22 to $32 an hour is the median income of most servers through the National Restaurant Association, which I'm actually on the board of. And so we see more servers exiting the industry as people implement base wage, because they're actually earning less. You can tell them, like, hey, we're going to pay you $17 an hour. Well, that's below their threshold of what they normally make. And a lot of these are single mothers with no education and work in the service industry because of the flexible child care and other things. And they can provide for their family better in that scenario, working for us for tips, than they can in any other job, with no education, with no background, with, you know, experience in the service industry, but again, with very little to no experience. They're going to make more than any professional secretary or a lot of things like that.
I feel like we're hitting on some points where it's like, okay, this 20 tops suck, or tipping sucks, or all these sort of things suck. But for us, to Steve-O's point, like 95% of it is really fucking great, you know?
Yeah.
And these guests are really interested and accommodating and happy to be there. And I think that a lot of times in our business, we get caught up in the negative and the bullshit of some of this. But at the end of the day, like, most shifts go really well. Yeah. You know, and you get one or two really bad tables or instances. And I feel that to Steve-O's point, it's like the common goal is to see everyone advance collectively, you know, and like, how do we reward excellence? How do we reward teamwork? How do we reward success in a way that allows the industry to grow? And a lot of these kids that come in and they don't know a damn thing, and then they walk out and they're SOMs. Or they're on a trajectory to take something and apply it to whatever that next phase of their career is. If you can deal with a pissed off guest at a table, you can do most business, right? Like you can relate to something that a guest is upset about in almost any business. But whether or not you can navigate like that negative energy, that upset business interaction, you know, that's invaluable.
Well, and the high tempo balance. You're doing a lot of these things, moving very quickly, managing a lot of situations at one time, because you don't just have that one guest that may be the one who's perturbed. You also have 5 other guests that are enjoying themselves at the same time, and you don't want their experience to suffer because of the one either. And so there's also, I mean, I have done it as a server, and I'll be 100% open about it. Like, I already know you've had a bad time. I've alerted my manager. I'm hoping they can fix that scenario. I am no longer focused on you because you're my manager's deal. I'm going to go focus on the people that I know are having a good time, because that's part of my job too.
Yeah.
And I'll say that. I mean, I think Tyler and I do this for the same reason. And I can say this, like, we do this because we love serving people. Like, I consider it an honor that I get to share in your most cherished memories. Like, you're coming out on first dates, you're coming out celebrating birthdays, anniversaries, all of the things and the reasons that people go out to eat most of the time is a celebration. And you're allowing us to share in that moment with you. And so to share that is an honor.
We mostly get $4 martinis, but
I'm gonna leave it right there with tip your fucking servers. And
Fuck
gentlemen,
yes.
I gotta say, this was far more fun than I expected it to be. Not that I didn't think you guys were gonna be fun. I was just like, how am I gonna pull off talking about tipping and like server wages and also like educating the public? But gents, we did it. And I want to say thank you. If you have anything you want to plug on the restaurants before we get out of here?
No, I mean, cheers to each other. It's a tough grind.
Yeah.
I hope, maybe Tyler will come onto the board of the Restaurant Association, because I want to get off of it one day. I've been on there for 10 years.
Yeah, I got to make it this at least one year.
You get through a year. I think they let me get on in year 3. So I'll get you till year 3.
You call me in 2 years and 3 months. Yeah. I would like to say thanks to Steve for paving the way for people like me. This is an interesting town to do restaurants, and the folks that have been here for a decade plus.
And thanks to Tyler for keeping us old dogs on our toes. Like a rising tide lifts all ships. And so, he's bringing a fresh look on food that I haven't seen since Parlor Market, honestly. And, it was Parlor Market that created a wave that created where I was. And now Tyler's bringing in a wave that's going to create the next generation. And that's what's great about it, is that we always have to be evolving, or else we're going to be dinosaurs.
Fair enough. And if you have been calling out, we do talk to each other. So we know.
We also know you.
We know who you are.
Beautiful. All right. Steve-O of the Manship, Stephen O'Neill, Tyler Alford of Eudoras, thank you so much. I am Dave Manors. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. Remember, tip your servers, and if your bartender cocks block you, buy him a shot of Jim Beam. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
No cuts.